welcome to UC Today. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Mike from Viyōta. How's it going, Mike? It's great to have you.
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we've got a great session today. We're going to be looking at user insights and how these user insights can be used to power really productive meetings. But to set the scene and kick us off, I wonder if you could talk through some of the biggest challenges organizations face when it comes to having really productive and useful hybrid meetings.
Yeah, so the challenges are multifold, right? First of all, the technology has to work. There are challenges with the technology. You have to have the right, network bandwidth to be able to hear everyone correctly and make sure that video is processed correctly. You have to have the right infrastructure. If we're talking about hybrid meetings, we're typically talking about people in the office as well as some people remote, and there's that mixture there. So you have, some challenges there with the infrastructure. Make sure that you have the right spaces available, that the right type of technology is outfitting those spaces, and a lot of the challenges are cultural. That don't really fit into a technology bucket of just ensuring that your leaders within an organization know how to properly run effective meetings, which, that's a skill that is not always developed as well as it should be, right? And also just make sure that everyone is involved to the way that they should be, and that, meetings are a good use of time, because that can be really challenging when everyone's not in person. It's a different venue when we're hybrid or remote compared to pre-COVID when we're all in the same building together. So there's so many challenges. You got to make sure the technology is solid, because you don't want technology to get in the way. And then I think there's a lot of value in using data to identify some of the other challenges that may not be quite so obvious.
And this is obviously an area you spend a lot of time focusing on, and you recently published an article in Harvard Business Review where you evaluated data from a staggering 40 million meetings. And there was a particularly stark finding there around the no participation rate for small meetings. And I wonder if you could just talk through what this stat means, how that rate's increasing, and why that should be a concern for enterprises.
Yeah, a really good question. And so, if you kind of rewind the clock a little bit, we were starting to get asked these type of questions from our customer base, when they were kind of suddenly went into this virtual first, remote first environment, because they were starting to say like, hey, you guys have all this data on every single meeting that we're in. Can you start to answer questions that are maybe not technology based? You start to answer questions, just give us some visibility on how is hybrid collaboration working for our organization in general? Like, where are areas for improvement? How can we make it better? I can make sure that everyone's getting what they need when they're communicating with each other. So we started looking through the data and found some, what I think is really interesting, compelling stats. And one of those was that no participation rate. And that's basically when, you're in a small group meeting and people join and basically never go off mute the whole time. And that's okay in some instances. There's plenty of times where I join meetings and I don't participate. I just need to get some information out of it. But when you see that rate increase, and we see the number kind of go up above a certain percentage, that tends to be a good indicator of, hey, this is an opportunity to give some employees some time back. So we don't necessarily need to have everyone in this meeting, this small group meeting that's not going to be collaborative. We're just here to convey information. We can do that via some other means and give some employees some time back, and that tends to be really, really popular with leadership as well as with the employee base. No one likes sitting through meetings that that they consider pointless, and the increase in heads down time, increase of productivity is really, really valuable. But what does that mean? The fact that it's going up, I think, speaks to the fact of it takes intentional effort to run effective meeting culture, especially in a hybrid and remote world. And when that intentional effort, kind of starts to wane a little bit, if you think like, if you're riding a bike up a hill and you stop pedaling, you can keep going for a little bit longer, but you're eventually going to stop and slide backwards, right? I think we're starting to see a little bit of that. And that also means that there's low-hanging fruit for giving time back and for optimizing, your employee schedule and your employees' productivity. So I think that's a really, really powerful statistic that a lot of folks, a lot of our employee base or customer base right now are starting to really dive into.
And you mentioned the wealth of data that Viyōta has and data that I suppose your customers will have about their own business. I wonder if you could talk through how these user insights can be used to sort of fundamentally create a solid and productive meeting culture, and how you're helping organizations get there with this data as well.
Yeah, that's a good question, because that kind of gets to the crux of the matter. There's all this data and how do I make sense of it, right? How do I take this mountain of data and find the right nuggets of gold that are in there? And that's one of the reasons that we're starting to add some more summarized value within the data. And a good example of that is what we released last year called the experience score, which is really just takes every single nugget of data that can possibly be used to understand how an employee's digital experience is on their when they're collaborating, and combines that into a single, easily digestible score that you can kind of see how it's tracking over time and all that kind of stuff. And that's been a really, really well received and powerful tool. All the data that supports it has always been there, right? But it takes a little bit of digging and expertise to put it all together. So we're starting to do that for our customer base. Like, we'll do the heavy lifting for you and just kind of say, here's the important metrics that you need to track. And and even more recently than that, we actually released some new features that allow you to see the breakdown of each individual constituent component of that experience score over time. So if something drops from a 9 to an 8 or something like that, you can see where that breakdown is in a weighted chart and see, like, well, was it because of connection quality for the user? Was it because of a number of disconnects? Was it any number of things? But you can kind of see how that goes. So the idea of summarizing the data and helping our customer base make sense of it has been a really, really, I think, powerful addition to the product.
Yeah, it's certainly been a busy few months for Viyōta. You mentioned there the more detailed breakdown into the user insights. There's also been some really interesting partnerships announced with Poly, Neat, and I think Logitech. So I wonder if you could talk through how this kind of extends the user insights package, if you like, and the benefit it's going to bring to your customers.
Yeah, and when we talk about those partnerships, it really is kind of along the same lines of making hybrid work, hybrid collaboration, more seamless and more effective. Specifically with the partnerships with Neat, Poly, and Logitech, that's really on the space insights side of the value prop. When we're talking about making sure that your physical spaces, your conference rooms, your meeting spaces, huddle spaces, all that, making sure that they're meeting the needs of customers or of your employees, and that's a critical part of your hybrid work, right? If people are going into the office and they can't find a space to meet, or if the space doesn't meet their the needs of their meeting, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be impediment to your RTO efforts, it's effective meetings, all of that stuff. The partnerships with those three vendors, those three companies, first of all, they're all great to work with, but it helps our customer base not have to do the heavy lifting, so they get the same value out of the product, so they can understand how their conference rooms are being utilized. They can get that people count data, they can get that occupancy data, and they can compare that with the size of the room, the capacity, all that kind of stuff, and really make some intelligent, informed decisions when space planning and improving your infrastructure. And they don't have to worry about the technology that goes underneath. They don't have to say, well, I have this room that's outfitted with this set of peripherals that was a certain vendor, and this other room is not, because as I'm sure like every large enterprise has a mixed bag of room technology in there. There's different levels of room refresh rates and all that kind of stuff. It's never one and done across the whole thing. So there's a mixture, and Viyōta's support for the various different players in the industry makes it more seamless for our customer base. They don't have to worry about it. We're going to give you that same value prop and the same single pane of glass, largely without regard for which technology vendor you choose.
So it's clearly been a busy few months for Viyōta. I expect it's going to be the same as we move through the second half of the year. And I wonder, Mike, the final question, if I could put you on the spot a bit, can you give us any clues about what we can expect to see from Viyōta over the remaining few months of the year?
Yeah, great question. And me with being a product manager, I love building out roadmap. I love kind of thinking ahead and thinking forward. I don't want to get into too much specifics, but what I will say is, like, the theme that we talked about earlier of the data is there, like there's a big mountain of it. How do we help our customers make sense of it for them and find those trends and summarize the data? We're going to continue that in some pretty big ways. So we're working on some underlying technology, using some machine learning and things like that to help materialize the trends that may have gone unnoticed into the product more easily, and discover value much more easily. So we're working on some features called summary views that would basically take summarized data, similar to what we did with Experience Score, but within many other areas of collaboration. summarize trends, find the high-level, meaningful, valuable metrics, and make that very visual for you, make that very interactive for you so you can drill down very seamlessly, and ultimately find the most valuable information to help your employees collaborate better. So that's, on the analytics side, that's one of our biggest focuses. Like, there's already a ton of data. We don't have a need to go get more data. We just need to say, here's the most valuable aspects of that data and give it to you more effectively. Now, on the monitoring side, we're also taking some big steps forward. We recently released a feature we called standardized attributes that allow you to say, everyone looks to kind of filter and aggregate data based on their location, whether it's a building or floor within a building or room type, all that kind of stuff. And so that's been in the analytics product, for a short while now. But on the monitoring side of things, we're doing the same thing. So if you want to set up your alerts, set up your monitors for one specific building or even one specific network within a building, you'll be able to do that and get hyper-targeted real-time information whenever anything that needs your attention happens, and send it to the most applicable person that can handle it as well. So lots of really good stuff. I'm excited. I mostly deal with the analytics side of the fence, so we're diving into some really interesting machine learning stuff and outlier detection, anomaly detection, principal components, all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to use that technology to build out, to find the most meaningful value for our customer base and hand it to you very, very effectively.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have a very busy second half of the year, and I hope perhaps we can catch up when some of that comes to fruition and hits the market. But in the meantime, Mike, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a share on social media, and we'll see you next time.